Brought to you by the only major real estate project in the world accepting Bitcoin. Galt's Gulch, Chile, where you can live and let live, and thrive and let thrive.
So, hello everyone. And first of all, thanks so much to Diego, Rodolfo, all the people involved in organizing this wonderful event. It's so great to be here and to see all this happening. Actually, I spent about 8 months over the past 2 years living in Argentina and Chile. And it was right here in Buenos Aires that I heard for the first time about Bitcoin. My friends called it La Moneda del Futuro. And it was their great passion that really infected me with the Bitcoin virus. And actually, it was just a couple weeks ago that it dawned to me that the true meaning of this Bitcoin revolution is actually that Bitcoin marks the end of monetary apartheid. Let me repeat that. Bitcoin marks the end of monetary apartheid. Bitcoin is the end of financial discrimination and segregation based on nationality and political privilege. In the economy of Satoshi Nakamoto, there are no artificial barriers to entry. You are not asked for any papers. There are no unnatural restrictions preventing mutually beneficial exchange between free individuals. Basically, if you've got value to offer, you're in business. This process of value creation has been happening for nearly 5 years now. And how far have we come? I mean, we've just seen Roger's presentation, how impressive it is, how far we've come. And since I started reading and speaking about Bitcoin and also recommending it as an investment, there was one thing, there was one question that kept coming back over and over. People ask me, why the hell should I invest in Bitcoin? However, and that was when Bitcoin was $5, $20, $30. However, with the tremendous growth we've seen and ever more opinion leaders expressing their admiration for this technology, the mentality is clearly changing. Actually, today, the main question that I get is, please tell me, how in the world do I invest in Bitcoin? And that's exactly what I've been asking myself for quite some time now. So in this presentation, I boiled down some of the lessons that I think I've learned. Don't take them as the 10 Commandments. These are just, humble starting points for a discussion I'm really hoping to have with you here at the conference. But that said, I do think they have merit, and it's the lessons that I'm learning, it's the principles that I'm using myself to inform my own investment decisions. So let's start with the first lesson. The first and most importantly, I think, lesson is to do your homework. If you consider investing in Bitcoin, do your very best to really understand what it is you're dealing with. To invest in Bitcoin without understanding it, it's like being in the middle of the ocean, not knowing where you are and where the current is going. Bitcoin is not just a vehicle for speculation. Bitcoin is not just a currency. Bitcoin is not a commodity, not just a commodity either. It's not just a better version of PayPal and Western Union, and it's not just a cheaper way of transacting financially either. Bitcoin is all of the above and more. The best way to describe Satoshi's value proposition is probably to say that we are dealing with a globally distributed digital protocol for trustless and easily verifiable information synchronization and property allocation. So let's go over this definition word by word. Global, it means that everybody in the world can use it. Digital means that it's super fast and nearly free. Protocol means that it is something that's carefully constructed and approved by many people. Trustless means that it's extremely reliable and not dependent on third parties. And then information synchronization. What that means is that it can host and secure any type of contract imaginable. Think about that. And finally, property allocation means that you can use it to determine your ownership of money and economic goods and that you can use the network to transport property to anybody you want at any time. So this is Satoshi's gift to the world. An amazing network and community for the exchange of value. And the only way to transact on this network is by making use of digital currency units called bitcoins, of which there are only 21 million in circulation. And that's what makes these bitcoins so very special, in my opinion, as an investment. And this is why when you become familiar with the Bitcoin culture, you'll run into these phrases like, one never sells all of his Bitcoins, or to the moon, pointing out the enormous long-term potential of this technology. And indeed, people who have profound understanding of Bitcoin, they realize that their decision to start acquiring some of these coins might actually very well be the most important investment decision they will ever make. That's lesson number one. Lesson number two is to not make things too complicated. First and foremost, focus on acquiring some coins. As I said, the real value of Bitcoin lies in the size and the quality of its network. Sure, there are many other decentralized digital currencies around nowadays, but the one with the largest and most sophisticated community surrounding it by a clear mile is really Bitcoin itself. So if you think the technology developed by Satoshi is something worth investing in, just go out there, maybe here in the street, and simply buy some Bitcoins or some millibitcoins, as they're called nowadays. Apart from the coins itself, it's true, it's also possible to invest in the ecosystem that's developing around Bitcoin. I'm talking about the exchanges, the merchant services, the escrow services, and more. And many brilliant entrepreneurs are active in this ecosystem, and they're creating businesses that are growing incredibly fast. However, if you do plan to invest, keep in mind that the Bitcoin network is designed to be a super lightweight, a very open environment, allowing people to transact directly with one another. That's the essence of a peer-to-peer currency. It cuts out the middleman, and it reduces overhead to almost zero. So in other words, if you go out and invest maybe in too many of these Bitcoin middlemen, you might end up empty-handed, because not all of them are going to succeed. Or at least, you might end up with less than if you had just invested primarily in coins. It's very hard, to outperform this average growth of 1,000% per year. So, by all means, do consider these periphery investments. I mean, I think they're incredibly interesting, and they'll be incredibly beneficial and profitable, but just don't go crazy on them. That would be my lesson number two. Number three, security, security, security. I'm going to keep this one very brief. If you invest in an asset with low third-party risk, the implication of that is that nobody is directly taking care of you. You are responsible for the safe storage of your value, of your coins, and nobody else. So do your research, read up on what's available in the market, take some time to set up a secure way to store your investment for the long term. Number four is to not overestimate the impact of politics. In every practical sense of the word, Bitcoin is a global and non-geographical phenomenon. So from the perspective of governments, it's like water. You try to grasp it in your hands and it flows to another place, out of your reach. So that's why, in general, political events will be overestimated in their eventual impact. I'm also talking about the recent events in China. We've seen also, for example, the seizure of the Silk Road. This caused Bitcoin to drop from $125 down to $85. It was a huge crash, the end of Bitcoin. Well, 3 days later, the price was back up. The heist turned out to be a complete non-event. So given that a lot of people, and especially in my opinion in the West, are very fearful of government and tend to overestimate its actual reach, I think that negative political shocks affecting Bitcoin are actually buying opportunities. Number five is talking about mass psychology. So to keep with our sailing analogy, there are fundamental currents that drive the Bitcoin ship in the long run, but there are also waves and wind on the sea. and these things have a strong short-term impact. So when Bitcoin experiences a series of positive shocks, maybe a celebrity endorsement like recently with Richard Branson, or some big retailer who decides to accept Bitcoin, that leads to a lot of media exposure and usually a big rally in the price. The rapid growth in price, however, eventually puts stress on the Bitcoin ecosystem, and inevitably a sort of short-term crisis develops. The new investors panic and the cycle enters the bust phase. And by the way, this is the phase when Bitcoin ignoramuses, they climb onto the rooftops and they start shouting, "It's the end of Bitcoin, Bitcoin is bust, it's all over, the bubble has popped." In order for you as an investor to survive this volatility in Bitcoin, it's very important to be aware of this dynamic of mass psychology. That's why I recommend to really map out a strategy for yourself and try to stick with it in order to avoid being swept away by the emotion of the moment. And that strategy can actually be very simple. You just buy some coins and you don't sell them. Sometimes people overcomplicate things, which maybe is what I'm going to do right now. So lesson number 6 is to understand the interaction of the way money flows in the crypto system, if you will. So recently there was a lot of news about this huge rally in Litecoin and all the other alternative currencies, and people really felt they had to be in that game, not to miss out. And then when Bitcoin went down a bit, the altcoins, they dropped much more in percentage terms. Somebody on Reddit said, when Bitcoin sneezes, the altcoins catch a cold. Well, I think there is a logic to this madness, or this seeming madness, and I think it actually looks a little something like this. Let's see if this works. Yeah, it looks a little something like this. So this diagram is a model of how liquidity, or at least how I interpret, how liquidity flows through the Bitcoin ecosystem. On the left, you see a huge tank of fiat money. Actually, it should just go like all the way up, of course. Let's see. And then on the so when the sentiment, around Bitcoin, when it is positive, you see that money flows from this fiat tank into the Bitcoin ecosystem. First, people spend fiat money to buy Bitcoins, and the value goes up. And when it looks like they can make more money by buying mining equipment, they will also spend dollars and put them right in here in the Bitcoin mining bucket. As the rally continues, the new adopters are bummed out that they have to buy Bitcoins at such a high price. And they start buying Litecoin, Peercoin, Terracoin, and all the other alternatives to Bitcoin. In that sense, we could say that the altcoin markets serve as a pressure valve for Bitcoin. So when the pressure rises here, a lot of that value starts, or a little bit of that value at least, starts going into the altcoin market. And the same happens with the mining market. When Bitcoin prices rise, the cost of mining equipment expressed in Bitcoin drops. And Bitcoin savers buy more mining rigs. That's what you see happen here. And when that happens, these mining hardware producers, they're given the signal to speed up production, to make even more rigs. At some point, however, talking about Bitcoin, the sentiment around the currency begins to turn again. Maybe there's some scandal. Maybe that's what's happening right now with the China event. And the value of Bitcoin stagnates or declines. Because the markets for the altcoins hardly have any US dollar liquidity, with that I mean is that there's not really a big pipeline between the fiat and the altcoins. Because of this, people have to exchange their altcoins for Bitcoin, and that leads to a quick decline in value of these altcoin markets. And in the Bitcoin mining sector, at some point, investors will figure that the massive investments in extra capacity have put a lot of pressure on the profitability of individual machines. The enthusiasm drops, and the stream of investments dry up. So to say it with our diagram, basically this bucket starts overflowing, or at least people perceive it to be that way. However, this perception can be misleading, because like what happened in September and October this year, the market did not take into account that Bitcoin might actually rally again, bringing the yield of mining machines back into positive territory. So what is the investors to make of all of this? I think a possible trading strategy based on this model is to try and be a contrarian, try to not do what everybody else is doing. So when do you invest in Bitcoin mining? Well, you do that when nobody thinks it is profitable anymore. When do you diversify into these alternative cryptocurrencies? You do that when Bitcoin is entering a new hype phase in the media and the price starts rising. When do you sell your altcoins for Bitcoin? Well, when these are hyped as well and when they're breaking record valuations compared to Bitcoin. Personally, in general, I recommend trading with very conservative amounts because you're exposing yourself to a lot of risk by moving in and out of these currency exchanges because they're also third parties. That brings us to the final lesson, which is number 7, and that is to invest what you feel comfortable with. Despite the attention that Bitcoin is getting in the media, it's clear that we are still in the very early phases of Bitcoin adoption. I completely agree with Roger that the current rally might just end up being a little bump in a couple of years. Merrill Lynch, for example, estimates that not even 3 million people are to some extent savers in Bitcoin today. That's about 1 in every 1,000 internet users and 1 for every 1,500 mobile phone users. So it's tiny. And the market cap of Bitcoin is now around 10 billion. That also is a small fraction of any market that it could potentially disrupt. And to give an idea, the size of the remittance market, so people working abroad sending money at home, it's $500 billion. The e-commerce market, 1,000 billion in size. US financial industry, so only US, 1,300 billion. Talking about money in general, the money supply of high inflation countries, so countries like Brazil, Russia, surely not Argentina, so countries that have plus 6% in inflation, all that money together is $4,500 billion. I'm sure a bunch of those people are interested in a high quality money like Bitcoin. The size of the physical gold market, a safe haven, often compared with Bitcoin, is about 7,000 billion large. And finally, foreign currency reserves that Bitcoin could actually replace. Because with Bitcoin, we don't need all this foreign exchange. These are also worth 7,000 billion. So anyway, you get the picture, right? These are all markets that Bitcoin technology has the power to completely disrupt. And each time it happens, it will put rocket fuel under the price of the Bitcoin currency. So what does this mean for the investor again? Well, it means that we should not be afraid of estimating the future potential value of one Bitcoin in the range of $100,000 to $1 million. In other words, the risk-reward ratio is still extremely positive. Bitcoin could potentially go times 100 from here. And yes, there are scenarios thinkable in which Bitcoin as a currency could fail. But the potential upside, if it keeps growing like it does today, is just simply spectacular. That's why I recommend investing with a conservative amount, a small amount of one's portfolio, maybe between 1% and 10%, depending on your risk profile and how much volatility you can stomach. So in conclusion, there is no need to bet the farm on Bitcoin. Feel free to invest with what you feel personally comfortable with. So these are my 7 lessons about how to invest in Bitcoin. And in closing, I just want to express why I'm so very optimistic about Bitcoin in Latin America. Everywhere I go in Europe or the US, I feel many young people suffer from a phenomenon that's called pronoia. It's the opposite of paranoia, apparently. Which means that they believe in a conspiracy of people, a conspiracy aimed at helping them. Especially they believe that there is a government who is really intent to helping them and who's really able to do that. Young people tell me, I'm not too worried, they say, that that we have all this debt. There will be a solution for it. Or they say, politicians will secure our deposits. They'll find a way to contain inflation. They'll find a way to keep the banks open. They'll find a way to keep saving for our pensions. They'll find a way to keep paying us our health care, our children's education, etc. And I find that actually young people in Latin America suffer a lot less from this pronoia disease. They instinctively know that the answer to the question of their economic well-being lies not in the decision of some government bureaucrat, but it lies in their own entrepreneurship, in their own imagination, in their own effort and initiatives. Talking about this country in specific, right now things may look pretty bleak, but I think Argentina has amazing potential for economic prosperity. I think, yes, the old days can come back when Buenos Aires was on equal footing with Paris and New York. And in many ways, actually, life could become much better than it was then. There's a tremendous amount of value in this country. That's obvious. And I think Bitcoin, which is the first truly global language of finance, I think Bitcoin will play an important role in helping unlock that value. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you very much, Tuur. No, stay up. You won't, be able to escape from questions.
All right, all right.
Okay.
This is one question that has two. Which is the main reason, in your opinion, that makes Bitcoin price rise?
Sorry, the one reason?
The main reason that makes Bitcoin price rise, increase.
The main reason?
Yes.
It depends when. I mean, in the very early days, it was just individuals wanting to play with this new thing, and it was more a curiosity. And then later, people started coming in, and so maybe you can clarify.
Okay.
Basically, people buying Bitcoin. People selling their dollars, selling their euros, and buying
Yes.
Bitcoins.
But which is the underlying asset of the Bitcoin?
Bitcoin has no underlying asset, and that's its strength because it means it cannot be confiscated. There is no server that exists somewhere that they can unplug. That's the strength of Bitcoin. The strength of Bitcoin is the network. It's not the actual thing. I mean, this is just the gateway into the network. The coins are just a gateway to get access to this network of value exchange, is what I would argue.
Uh-huh. I think, your question, we will give like a general talk about Bitcoin, where we will discuss these fundamentals or, if, why we use Bitcoins and those things. But, I think, maybe, because if not, this is more like a dialogue than questions and answers. No?
This currency depends on much more issues than the perception or the psychology of the market.
Absolutely. Yeah, the reason why fundamentally Bitcoin rises.
That is my question. Which are those underlying reasons?
Well, one reason that Eric Voorhees is always happy to point out, and I completely agree, is that with one click of the mouse, you can send 150 million worth of value across the globe instantaneously. Nobody can stop you, and it arrives instantly. And you have no third-party risk. Nobody can hold it for you. And we're living in a time, we're kind of dancing on a volcano in terms of the financial system. All the banks are insolvent. I mean, people don't like to admit it in the West, but it's a fact. They're insolvent. And increasingly, people are looking for a safe place. I mean, just recently it got announced in London that the value increase of the houses will be taxed. There will be a capital gains tax on the houses. Foreigners were looking to find a safe place to store their value, and they bought houses in London. Well, that's not a safe place. So obviously there's a huge demand for that. But apart from that, there's this value exchange network that's so efficient. I would definitely recommend to go to the talk of Peter Schurda later in this conference. He will be able to go into that much more profoundly.
There was another question, and one thing they made me realize is I never introduced myself. I'm Diego Gutierrez Saldívar. I'm the president of the Argentinian Bitcoin Foundation. So, thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks. I have a question. Why believe in Bitcoin and not in other currencies? Because, for example, Litecoin have other characteristics
Sure.
that Bitcoin doesn't have.
So
Yeah.
why not in Bitcoin? Sorry, why in Bitcoin and not in alternative currencies? I'm a great fan of all this experimentation that's going on. I own Litecoins. I own several of the other altcoins. I'm just saying, if you are new to this, you want to focus first on Bitcoin and then consider what else is there. Actually, I don't think it's maybe the best idea if there's a Facebook out there to want to build the next Facebook, but maybe you want to build the killer app on Facebook. If there's a Google out there, maybe you don't want to invent the next Google. Maybe you want to do something really ingenious with AdWords or something else. So I think looking at the Bitcoin protocol and seeing who is playing with that, who's going to use the protocol as a platform to do new and innovative things, I think that's where you want to look for the next big opportunity.
Last question and one little comment. We will skip the networking break. We'll add some time to the lunch time because we have optional talks, so we can organize. So next talk will be Juan talk. Last question for Tuur.
Tuur.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. You were first. Sorry.
Voy a hacer la pregunta en castellano, ¿puede ser?
Wait, let me just listen in.
Ok. Mencionaste que existen un par de escenarios poco probables para que Bitcoin fracase. Que existían un par de... la posibilidad. ¿Cuáles serían esos escenarios?
Oh, this is problematic. Because I was focusing here, because you were talking so carefully and so slow, I could have understood it. Probably.
Oh. You mentioned a couple of scenarios where Bitcoin could collapse, and he wants to know what those scenarios would be.
I think, as I said before, I don't think it will be a political event. I don't think the G20 will get together and decide, let's get rid of this thing and we will pursue everybody and, you know, go through any hard drive and even get the satellites out of the sky, if I understand it right, because we're going to have nodes in space soon. I don't think it's going to be a political event. It is presumably, most likely would be some kind of bug in the code, like from the outside. From what I can tell, something the unknown in the Bitcoin code, some kind of weakness. But then you can argue there can be a fork and they can fix it. And definitely it's not going to mean the end of cryptocurrencies because the genie really is out of the bottle. If there is some kind of weakness with Bitcoin, somebody else will make a patch and they will launch a new currency. This is unstoppable in my opinion.
So we will extend the Q&A because I just checked my clock and we have enough time.
By the way, can I just mention, these slides, if you happen to like them, they're designed by an Argentinian graphic designer. He lives right here in Buenos Aires. He accepts Bitcoin very gladly. His website is cascal.com.
Okay, and next question?
Hi, I have a question with regards, obviously with the growth that Bitcoin is having, there are lots of startups, as you mentioned, building, fantastic things around it. And as, that economy grows, there's also a lot of, pushback from the current financial sector and the current, real currency economy. And, obviously there are different paths that this growth is going to take, but I think, for things to become big, at some point you will have to merge Bitcoin, with the, current currencies. So basically what I'm talking about is if today you have a company that, wants to trade with Bitcoin or, you have a pullback from, the current financial sector. Do you think that for that growth to continue, it's better to completely ignore the financial system, or which are the ways that you envision as the best ways to engage with that system in that transitional period to the full Bitcoin economy?
That's the beautiful thing about things happening in the market. You don't have to be like a genius to think this is the best strategy, because there are thousands of people trying many, many things. There's no need for like a godlike person to predict what is the best way and in a Stalin-esque way to say all of us are going that way. The Bitcoin community is finding solutions. Some people are more involved in setting up businesses that are very compliant. Some people are more involved with setting up businesses that are, I wouldn't say illegal, but that are focused on decentralization. And we'll see like which of the two. I think actually it will be a combination, and this will make the system or the currency or the environment very resilient, Because you've seen it also in the exchanges now. There are different strategies that the exchangers are using. Some people are setting up a big exchange they negotiate with the very big banks. Other people, like local Bitcoin, set up a network where local people can find each other. Other people just, have their existing money exchange business and see what they can do. I hear there's something like money caves in this country. I'm hearing that they know about Bitcoin, and Roger also mentioned
Blue caves.
Sorry?
Blue caves, we call
the
them.
blue caves, exactly. So, I mean, it will go like from the perspective of the regulator, Bitcoin is the ultimate nightmare. It's like a dragon with 1,000 heads, and you chop off one, and there are 50 new ones. So, but if you're an entrepreneur and you're thinking about doing something, I would say ask yourself, how vulnerable am I? Look, for example, at the Bitcoin Express stock exchanges. There's a couple of stock exchanges that were dealing in, that were organizing a stock market based in Bitcoin. Well, we've seen a lot of closures, and now we see people working on the same thing, but in a decentralized way. They're called color coins. There's an initiative called Mastercoin. Maybe that's more the way to go. I think in general, if you can say we are focused in the direction of decentralization, and we are cognizant of the fact that this is a global market, I think then you're maybe in the right direction. Just to make sure I understand it.
Yeah,
right, it'd be
okay.
nice in English.
No,
that's okay.
I think you understand me. So you said something that for a newbie, it's always a good time to invest in Bitcoins, because no matter the moment, it has a lot of future. But like this 1-2 weeks ago, we've seen like a Bitcoin 1200s, and now it's like 600s.
Right.
Most small investors, they don't panic and sell, they buy and hold. But I think there's like a huge speculation on traders that are the big whales in the market, or something that make this price go up and down.
So your question is about timing. When is the best time?
Yeah. What do you think is what is in this case, especially because now it broke a record, and now it's like, what do you think it will recover soon, or it will like find a new floor, and then the second,
go ahead,
Bitcoin is accused to be used for many illegal activities, we all know what many things that we can call illegal, and because it's anonymous. And do you think about this project about certifying Bitcoins, it will succeed? Or?
I get the feeling you're asking two different questions.
Yeah,
Can we focus on one? Is that okay? Because I think they're really short in time. Yeah. So maybe the question about timing, about when to buy, and should I buy everything at once? In general, it's nearly impossible to predict the peak of some kind of rally. Bitcoin can go up and go to 3,000 with a bottom in 600. It can go all the way down to 200. In general, to identify the bottom, like when people are really tired of something, and we saw that happen last year. So that's something you want to focus on. And so if you're buying and there's a lot of excitement, maybe put in a little bit of money, and then when you feel the sentiment is very negative, I think that's a good time to put in some more.
Tuur, can we wear you off a little bit more and can we take some more time of your?
Well, yeah, but don't the people?
2 more questions. No, we are on time. That's why I'm letting it run, but I don't want to tire you too much.
I'm fine. Okay.
Yeah, but there's other
there's
people
only
want
room
to.
for 2 more questions. So
yeah,
maybe.
let's give the opportunity to somebody else.
Tuur, when will my mother understand Bitcoin? I mean, we over here, we are early adopters, all of us. I mean, there's maybe a few million people in the whole world who hold Bitcoins at the moment.
Right.
And in different parts of the world, like I've been to Kenya, just came a few weeks ago from Zambia, different kind of people invest in Bitcoin there. But when will somebody like my mother, who barely knows how to do email, will buy Bitcoins and start using them?
But she has email.
She does, but when will it go Main Street?
Right. Well, the thing is, I think it's not necessary that people eventually, when we hit like mass adoption, that people understand Bitcoin, like, they can read the source code and all that. Even I can't read the source code. for many people, I mean, look at internet penetration. It's almost 100%. I think worldwide we're above 80%. How many people understand what the internet really is, apart from just a cable that goes in the wall or something that's in the air? And we'll reach such a point. And it's up to the entrepreneurs, such as Blockchain Info and the people building the wallets, people building hardware wallets, people making all types of versions of Bitcoins. There's Bitcoin cards, Bitcoin coins, there's wallets on your smartphone. So it's up to the entrepreneurs to build that. And how long it's going to last? I don't know. There's Rick Falkvinger, his estimation is that usually when there's a radical new technology, it takes about 10 years to go to full adoption. But what we have here is the perfect storm, because we have this problem in the financial system, and we also have the fact that all the hardware is basically already there. Bitcoin is in essence a software application. So there's no need to like pull all the wires and all the fibers underneath the ocean to make sure everybody's connected. Everybody is already connected. So I think it's going to be faster than a lot of people think it is. It will become.
Okay. Last question over there.
Okay.
One little thing. Bitcoin is at 800 again, so sorry for the boomers.
Perhaps most of us here understand that volatility is a natural thing for Bitcoin right now. What I'm actually surprised about is these stability periods we see in Bitcoin. You see, in 30 days, I think it was 6 months ago, 30 days, you would see the price going crazy, reaching like $250. Then it would drop, and you would see this stability period for like 4 months,
right?
$100. That was like pinned, like handmade. Do you have any formed idea about why this is happening? How
yeah,
this
I think
is
it had to do with supply. So what happened is, what we've seen in the past few months is a revolution, a technological revolution, an arms race in Bitcoin mining. And so there was this jump from graphic cards towards chips that are individually, specifically designed to do nothing but Bitcoin mining. And the jump in efficiency is so incredible, this profit opportunity was so incredible that a lot of people sold their Bitcoins to buy mining equipment. And that put a lot of downward pressure on the price. And that's why I think we went 10x in one time. I think if we didn't have this mining revolution, prices would have gone up more gradually. But in general, talk to early adopters. I mean, take the opportunity. There's people here that were there when that were there in 2010. They will tell you volatility today is nothing compared to then. Bitcoin went up 50% up and down in one day. Today, we are living in stability heaven compared to the early days. And it will continue this way. I mean, the price will go up, but the daily volatility will diminish, like in the oil markets in the 19th century. Volatility was crazy in the early days because the infrastructure wasn't built, the demand, there were a lot of questions. And now the oil price is almost global. So I think the same will happen with Bitcoin.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Big applause.